Thank you, Ambassador Bogai, and indeed thank you for your definitely astute advocacy for issues of pertinent interest of UNESCO, not only culture, certainly education, sciences, and as maybe you don't know, but the Ambassador Bogai is a former president of the General Conference of UNESCO, and we've had the privilege and enjoyed her guidance over discussions of matters of interest for UNESCO. I would like to start by welcoming all the participants. I do hope that you're excited at the opportunity to be here at the United Nations at this historic moment when the UN will adopt the new 2013 agenda, which is indeed an agenda of the people, by the people, and for the people. It's not an agenda just to be drafted by some bureaucrat sitting in New York, but it's also something that we do hope, and we've just heard from Ambassador Quadra, we do hope this will have a real impact on the ground. For UNESCO, being the UN cultural organization, culture has been regarded certainly as an enabler and as a driver for development. Not only by UNESCO Secretariat, but also by Ambassador Bogai could confirm probably by the member states, the delegates of the member states to the UNESCO that have dedicated their time to certain discussions happening around culture and why culture is an enabler and a developer, an enabler and a driver for sustainable development. First, when we speak about sustainable development, we speak about three pillars. One is the economic pillar, which is combating poverty, promoting economic growth. The second one is the social pillar, certainly promoting social inclusion. And the third one is the environmental pillar. That includes protection of our Mother Earth, nature, and all that. And at UNESCO, we do believe that culture is relevant to all these three pillars. Indeed, culture, certainly through the creative industries, including cinema, film industries, arts, fashion, they have been one of the fastest growing industries in the world, and latest report that UNESCO produced in 2013 has found out that worldwide creative industries now reach an average of 5 to 7% of GDP. This is an average worldwide. Certainly, through around the World Heritage sites that we see, there is a creation of decent jobs. There is an empowerment of people through the crafts, through the people visiting these sites, visiting the museums, and all that. This is the economic part. The other one is the social inclusion, and as I said, no one could imagine that a peaceful and socially inclusive society could be built without people having their cultural rights respected. And the third one, of course, which Ambassador Quadra could mostly testify to, because I've been to his country and I know how much the traditional knowledge, the traditions of the local people, the indigenous peoples, how much it could be used to contribute to the prevention of further climate change and the deterioration of certain environmental conditions. That said, and Ambassador Quadra was very extensive in explaining to you where exactly in the Sustainable Development Goals culture is reflected or mentioned. I just wanted to tell you that UNESCO, as the UN Culture Organization, is working now closely on developing cultural indicators in order to measure progress of these so-called culture-related targets. So we want to have an evidence-based approach to provide member states with and to support their policy making in order to make sure that culture indeed is a means, could be used as a means of implementation of this new sustainable development agenda. If you allow me, I would like to indeed extend a little bit the topic and just bring very briefly your attention to something which is happening now, which is also related to the culture for development, but it's very specific by itself, and it's notably the destruction of cultural heritage that we see now happening in a number of situations. We've seen an unprecedented targeting of cultural heritage recently in Mali, in Libya. Now we see these barbaric acts happening in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, and indeed, UNESCO's Director General has called on many opportunities the attention of the international community and calling these barbaric acts by violent extremists, calling it cultural cleansing, and trying to bring the attention to this phenomena. And some of you might ask, given what is happening now in Syria and Iraq, the humanitarian situation, people fleeing death and illnesses and disease and all that, how does culture equate to all that, and why should we pay attention indeed to culture? But I've spoken with colleagues indeed who are on the field, and they've shared their experience working with refugees who themselves say, indeed, targeting culture is targeting our own identity. It's what we are. And it's quite unfortunate that now Syria and Iraq, this is indeed the so-called ancient region of Lower Mesopotamia, that is indeed the cradle of the human civilization that has witnessed the creation of the cities, has witnessed the creation of the alphabet, and it's indeed one of the most culturally rich regions. And it's so unfortunate that now we are seeing these terrible destructions happening in the, for example, the Museum of Mosul, Hatra, Nimrud, the recent destruction of cultural heritage in Palmyra, also with the torturing and the killing of its director. And these cultural destruction, heritage cultural destruction acts are indeed accompanied by looting of cultural artifacts, trafficking these cultural artifacts to so-called countries of destination, where indeed there is an interest to buy these artifacts, and then supporting, financing recruitment of terrorist and crime organizations through illicit trafficking of these artifacts. So indeed, unfortunately, what we've seen recently is that culture has been at the forefront of the war, and it is a very worrisome phenomenon for UNESCO. For UNESCO, it's we are sending an appeal and working on collaborating with partners. Indeed, I just wanted to bring your attention on that. There are a few things happening, but also we will have a high-level meeting this Sunday with a number of ministers. I've shared some documents at the end of the room. So I just wanted to bring our attention also to this phenomenon. Thank you, indeed.
Thank you.